Which of these 5 symbols catches your eye the most? Don't overthink it. Don't analyze its meaning or purpose. Just pause, look, and let your intuition decide. This isn't just a test. It's a doorway into a part of you that you rarely explore. Carl Jung believed that even our smallest choices are mirrors of our inner world, the archetypes that live within us, the unspoken desires we hide, the wounds we carry. Sometimes what draws you in reveals more about your soul than any words could. Can a simple symbol uncover the secrets of your psyche? Can it reflect your shadows, your search for meaning, or your deep desire for transformation? Choose with your heart, because what follows is not merely an analysis of shapes. It's a story about who you are. Before we dive deeper, if you're ready to explore the hidden dimensions of your psyche and discover what your unconscious is trying to tell you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the journey we're about to take together will change how you see yourself forever. Now let me tell you something that might surprise you. The symbol you just chose isn't random. Nothing in your psyche is random. And by the end of this journey, you'll understand not only what you chose, but why you've been choosing the same patterns your entire life. But first, we need to understand what each symbol truly represents.
The circle. At first glance, this symbol seems simple. A perfect loop with no beginning and no end. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't scream for recognition. And yet its wholeness has a quiet magnetism. There's something deeply comforting in its completeness, a sense of unity amid the world's fragmentation. If this symbol drew your attention, it's likely that deep inside you crave integration and wholeness. Your soul longs for a sense of completion, for all the scattered pieces of yourself to finally come together. No more division, no more inner conflict, no more exhausting contradictions. You want to exist in harmony, in balance, in perfect alignment with your true self. Jung once said that the circle, or mandala, represents the self, the totality of the psyche. It's the symbol of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. By choosing this symbol, you may unconsciously be seeking unity. You yearn for integration, perhaps because your life or your past has been marked by fragmentation, disconnection, or a sense of being torn between opposing forces. Maybe you grew up in an environment where different parts of you were at war with each other, where you had to be one person at home and another person in the world. You learned to survive by compartmentalizing, by dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. This symbol archetypically represents the seeker of wholeness, the integrator. They move through life not chasing external achievements, but searching for inner coherence. They don't seek to conquer the world. They seek to understand themselves completely, to embrace every shadow and every light within their being. This archetype carries the wisdom of self-knowledge, but also the danger of endless introspection. Your choice may reflect someone who looks inward so intensely that they sometimes lose touch with the outer world. Yet the integrator sees what others miss. They find meaning in paradox, beauty in contradiction, and truth in the spaces between opposites. They're reflective souls, attuned to the deeper currents of existence, but often struggle with practical reality because the inner world feels so much more vast and meaningful. But here's what I haven't told you yet. This symbol doesn't just reveal who you are now. It reveals who you're becoming. And there's something specific about people who choose the circle that most psychology channels won't tell you. I'll reveal that in just a moment, but first, let's explore what this choice means for your relationships. This circle might be your soul's way of saying, "I'm searching for completion, but I haven't found it yet." That mechanism often forms in childhood, when love felt conditional or fragmented, when you had to earn affection by being different versions of yourself for different people. So wholeness became your deepest longing, unity your refuge, and integration your life's mission. If you chose this symbol, you likely value emotional coherence. You feel uncomfortable with contradictions, with relationships that feel disjointed, with environments where you can't be your authentic self. Your soul might be tired of pretending, and your heart just wants to be whole, completely and unapologetically. But Jung reminds us what we seek outside often reflects what we've abandoned within. Wholeness, though beautiful, isn't found by eliminating our contradictions. It's found by embracing them. Do you fear your own complexity? Are you searching for perfect balance, or are you running from the messy, chaotic truth of being human? Your choice whispers, "I want to be complete." But the deeper question is, are you willing to accept yourself as you are right now, with all your beautiful imperfections? Or are you waiting to become whole before you allow yourself to truly live? This symbol is more than geometry. It's a reflection of a soul seeking integration, yet sometimes afraid that wholeness might never come. A soul that fears that if it stops searching, it will remain forever fragmented. And there's no shame in that. It's simply another way to exist, another survival strategy, another archetype speaking through you. Because we are not only what we choose, but also the why behind that choice.
The triangle. This symbol points upward. When you look at it, you can almost feel its direction, its purpose, its drive towards something higher. It's ambitious without apology, sharp, focused, aimed at the peak. It's not for those content with mediocrity, but for those who value achievement, growth, and transcendence. It's the symbol of ascent, of reaching beyond your current limitations, of refusing to settle for less than your potential. If this symbol caught your eye, your psyche likely longs for progress, for movement, for a sense of direction that feels meaningful. You're someone who resists stagnation, not only in your career, but also in your inner development. You need forward momentum. You appreciate goals, clarity, and pathways that lead somewhere significant. You might believe that life, though sometimes difficult, is meant to climb,
conquer, transform into something greater than what you started with. According to Jung, this choice aligns with the hero archetype. The hero doesn't seek comfort. They seek challenge, transformation, victory over obstacles. They feel a deep sense of purpose, a calling to rise above their circumstances and become something more. It's an energy of ambition, but also of sacrifice, of achievement, but also of burden. The hero, you see, often carries the weight of their own expectations. They climb not only because they want to, but because they feel they must. By choosing this symbol, you may be someone driven by an inner imperative to prove yourself. You have standards. Perhaps you don't speak them aloud, but they quietly dictate your actions. They push you forward when others would rest. You dislike complacency, weakness, and settling for less. You seek excellence, mastery, transcendence.
But Jung reminds us, every archetype casts a shadow. Behind the drive for achievement can hide the fear of insignificance. Behind the climb toward the peak can lie the terror of being ordinary. Do you fear failure, not only in the world, but within yourself? What would happen if you stopped climbing? If you allowed yourself to simply exist at whatever altitude you've already reached? If you rested without guilt? And here's something fascinating. The people who choose the triangle often share a specific childhood pattern, a pattern that shaped not just their ambition, but their entire relationship with self-worth. I'll tell you exactly what that pattern is after we explore the next symbol. But keep this in mind, your drive might not be coming from where you think it is. This upward triangle isn't just an aesthetic choice. It's a manifestation of your need to transcend, to become, to evolve beyond your current form. Perhaps it echoes a childhood where love was conditional on achievement, where being good enough meant constantly improving. Or maybe you're trying to build now what you once lacked, a sense of significance that helps you feel worthy of existence. You might push yourself relentlessly, maintaining momentum even when exhaustion screams for rest. You value success not as vanity, but as proof. Proof that you matter, that your life means something, that you're not wasting the precious time you've been given. Maybe you fear showing vulnerability because it might reveal that underneath all the achievement, you're still searching for acceptance. Maybe you wish someone could see the effort it takes to keep climbing, the lonely nights, the sacrifices, the parts of yourself you've had to leave behind on the mountain. Does that make you driven? Absolutely. But it might also mean that in this achievement-obsessed modern world, you've confused becoming with being. You've mistaken the climb for the destination. Jung wrote that the deepest transformation happens when we stop identifying with the hero and start integrating the wisdom of the journey itself. By choosing this symbol, you might be trying to prove your worth in a world that made you feel you had to earn the right to exist. Ambition isn't a flaw. It can be a beautiful expression of human potential. But ask yourself, are you climbing towards something or running from something? Does your ascent liberate you or exhaust you? This symbol whispers, I need to rise. But sometimes rising isn't about reaching higher. It's about diving deeper into who you already are, before the world told you you weren't enough.
The square. This isn't just a symbol, it's a foundation. Its solid edges and stable form seem to declare, I am grounded, reliable, unshakable. It carries the energy of structure, order and permanence. It doesn't promise excitement or transcendence. It promises something more precious: stability. The assurance that when everything else falls apart, there's still a foundation beneath your feet. If this symbol drew you in, deep inside you may be yearning for security, for predictability, for a sense of order in a chaotic world. It's the choice of someone who, consciously or not, seeks to build something lasting, something that won't crumble when the storms come. If you're finding value in this exploration and you want to go even deeper into Jungian psychology and discover the hidden patterns running your life, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to reveal about the square will completely shift how you understand your need for security. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. According to Jungian depth psychology, this symbol resonates with the builder or the sage archetype. The builder isn't just constructing external structures, they're creating an internal architecture of meaning, values, and principles that can withstand life's inevitable chaos. But developing this need for structure often means walking through an old wound. The wound of instability, of unpredictability, of never knowing if the ground beneath you would hold. Choosing this symbol might mean you've developed a need for control, not out of rigidity, because at some point in your life, everything felt uncertain. Perhaps as a child, your environment was unstable. Maybe your family life was unpredictable, emotionally volatile, or physically chaotic. Your needs for safety were overlooked. Your sense of security was always conditional. So you built a strategy. If I create order, if I establish structure, if I make everything predictable, then I'll finally feel safe. This symbol may also reflect the inner foundation archetype, the part of you that had to become your own parent, your own anchor, your own source of stability. By choosing this symbol, you may be trying to build within yourself the solid ground you once lacked. It's a foundation not of rigidity, but of survival. Yet there's a danger here. Sometimes what begins as structure becomes a cage, a life so ordered that spontaneity dies, where you exist in safety but never truly live. The stability of this symbol says, I want security. But security doesn't mean stagnation. Often it's a response to trauma, the psyche's way of saying, I've lived through too much chaos, I need to know what's coming. Those drawn to structure often carry hidden anxieties. They crave environments where surprises are minimal, where they can anticipate, prepare, protect themselves from the unpredictability that once wounded them. Yet even the strongest foundation can become a prison, a rigid framework built by the ego to avoid the terrifying freedom of uncertainty. Because if you must always know what's coming, always be prepared, always maintain control, when do you get to surrender? When do you trust? When do you allow yourself to be surprised by life instead of defended against it? Jung taught that our shadow often appears in what we most resist. So if you surround yourself with structure and order, it's worth asking, what am I protecting myself from? Does your need for stability come from wisdom or from fear? Are you building a life or constructing a fortress? This symbol might also represent your need to control your environment, your schedule, your emotions, your narrative. You decide what enters your space, when and how. And while that can feel empowering, it can also become isolating. Do you fear chaos? Can you allow yourself to release control and still feel worthy? Because the true self, Jung said, emerges not through perfect order, but through the conscious acceptance of life's inherent unpredictability. If this symbol calls to you, it might mean your soul seeks not just stability, but trust. Not just security, but the courage to live fully even when you can't control every outcome. This symbol whispers, "I want solid ground." But sometimes that ground isn't found in external structures. Sometimes it's discovered when you realize that even in uncertainty, even in chaos, you are still standing. You are still here. You are still whole.
The spiral. This symbol doesn't sit still. It moves through space, expanding outward and inward simultaneously. It speaks of cycles, evolution, and transformation. It's organic, alive, constantly in motion. It refuses to be linear or predictable. It's the symbol of growth that doesn't follow a straight path, of wisdom that comes through returning to the same lessons at deeper levels, of a journey that spirals through darkness and light again and again. If this symbol caught your attention, you're probably someone who understands that life isn't a straight line. Inside you lives a deep awareness of patterns, cycles, and the recursive nature of existence. You know that healing isn't linear, that growth requires revisiting old wounds, that transformation is a spiral, not a ladder. Carl Jung called this the process of circumambulation, the way the psyche circles around the self, approaching the center through repeated encounters with the same themes, each time from a slightly different angle, each time with slightly more consciousness. It's the movement of individuation itself, the journey toward wholeness that never truly ends, but deepens infinitely. By choosing this symbol, you may be expressing your understanding that life is cyclical. You're not afraid of returning to old patterns because you know that each return brings new insight. You've probably experienced significant transformations in your life, moments where everything you thought you knew dissolved and reformed into something new. But as Jung observed, the spiral can also represent the risk of being trapped in repetition. Sometimes what appears to be growth is actually circling the same wound without ever truly healing it. Your wisdom may not only be insight, it may also be a defense. Perhaps you intellectualize your pain, analyzing your patterns so thoroughly that you never have to fully feel them.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Remember earlier when I mentioned that each symbol reveals not just who you are, but a specific pattern from your past? Well, if you chose the spiral, there's something unique about your relationship with time and memory, something that most people don't recognize about themselves. I'll explain exactly what that is right after we explore the final symbol. But I want you to pay close attention to what comes next, because the last symbol, holds the key to understanding all the others. This choice also reveals a longing for meaning that transcends simple answers. You're not satisfied with surface-level explanations. You need depth, nuance, complexity. You understand that truth isn't binary, that wisdom comes from holding paradox, that the most profound insights emerge from contradiction. Jung wrote that connecting with the spiral pattern is essential in the journey of individuation because it reminds us that growth isn't about leaving the past behind. It's about integrating every layer of experience into a more complete understanding of who we are. By choosing this symbol, you're not just acknowledging your complexity, you're embracing it. But ask yourself, is your spiral moving somewhere? Are you deepening with each cycle, or are you stuck in a loop? Does your awareness lead to transformation, or does it keep you perpetually analyzing without ever committing to change? This symbol says, I understand that life is a journey without end. But remember, understanding isn't the same as living. Are you willing to step into the spiral fully, not just as an observer, but as a participant? Maybe you're a soul that needs not just awareness, but action, not just insight, but courage, not just to see the pattern, but to break it when necessary and create something entirely new.
The cross. This symbol doesn't charm with curves or complexity. It stands at the intersection of opposing forces, vertical and horizontal, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, conscious and unconscious. It radiates tension, balance, and the meeting point of contradictions. It's not a symbol of comfort. It's a symbol of crucifixion, of sacrifice, of the place where transformation happens through suffering and integration. If this is the symbol you chose, your psyche may be speaking of conflict. You've learned to stand at the crossroads, not only between different paths, but between different parts of yourself. Your inner world isn't simple. It's a battleground where opposing forces meet, clash, and sometimes create something entirely new. In Jungian terms, this choice aligns with the wounded healer archetype. The wounded healer carries their pain not as a burden alone, but as medicine. They understand suffering because they've lived through it. They know transformation because they've been transformed. Strength, yes, but earned through fire. Wisdom, yes, but carved from wounds. This archetype doesn't trust easy answers because life has shown that truth lives in paradox, that growth requires sacrifice, that becoming whole means confronting everything you've tried to avoid. Choosing this symbol may reveal that you've lived between worlds, between identities, between conflicting desires or beliefs. Your outer life may appear coherent, but beneath the surface, there's tension. Perhaps you've learned to hold opposing truths simultaneously, to exist in the space where contradictions meet.
Maybe your story carries a fundamental split. A moment when your life divided into before and after. A wound that never fully healed, but instead became the source of your deepest wisdom. But your position at the crossroads also reflects a capacity for integration that most people never develop. You reject simplistic thinking. easy binaries, comfortable illusions. You don't need everything to fit neatly. You need authenticity, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it reveals contradiction. Jung noted that the cross represents the ego's confrontation with the self, the moment when consciousness meets the totality of the psyche and must either break or expand. You protect yourself because vulnerability once meant annihilation, but sometimes that protection becomes isolation. You might avoid choosing a clear path because committing feels like betraying one part of yourself. Can you stand at the intersection without being torn apart? Can you honor both directions without losing yourself in the tension? Can you allow yourself to choose, knowing that every choice is also a sacrifice, but that remaining at the crossroads forever is its own kind of death? This symbol says, I can hold opposites. But remember, sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to stop holding tension and start moving in a direction, any direction, trusting that integration happens through living, not just through understanding. Your choice reveals a soul that doesn't break easily, that has learned to carry complexity, yet quietly longs for resolution. And that resolution can only come when you dare to move from the crossroads into committed action. Carl Jung wrote that real transformation happens not at the intersection, but when we finally choose to walk forward, carrying both the wisdom of the cross and the courage to live beyond it.
This symbol is a declaration of depth, but also an invitation, a call to stop standing between worlds and start creating a world where all of you can finally exist together. Now, let me tell you what I promised earlier. If you chose the triangle, here's the pattern you need to understand. People who are drawn to upward-pointing symbols almost always grew up in environments where love was performance-based, where affection was conditional on achievement, where you learned that your value wasn't inherent, it had to be earned, proven, demonstrated again and again. That's why you can't stop climbing, not because you love the summit, but because you fear what happens if you stop. You fear becoming invisible again, unworthy again, unloved again. And for those of you who chose the spiral, here's your hidden pattern. You're drawn to cyclical symbols because somewhere deep in your psyche, you're trying to return to a moment in time that was left unresolved. There's a memory, an experience, a feeling that you keep circling back to, not because you're stuck, but because your unconscious knows there's something there you still need to integrate. The spiral isn't your prison. It's your map back to the part of yourself you left behind. If this resonates with you, if you're starting to see the patterns that have been running your life from the shadows, then you need to subscribe right now. Because in upcoming content, we're going deeper into these archetypes, into the specific childhood wounds that create each pattern, and into the exact steps you can take to break free from unconscious repetition and start living consciously. hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next phase of this journey will give you tools most people never discover.
Choosing one of these symbols is not a trivial act. It's the voice of your unconscious speaking through archetypal imagery. Even the simplest shapes carry stories. Stories about your desires, fears, needs, and hidden wounds. What you choose reveals a fragment of your soul, often unseen, yet deeply real. There's no right or wrong choice here. Each symbol is a doorway into your individuation process, the lifelong journey toward becoming whole. To look with the eyes of the soul is to realize that every symbol, every image that draws your attention has the power to guide you toward a deeper understanding of who you are and of the world you carry within. Because, as Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So listen closely to the symbol you chose, to the silence it evokes, to the story it's telling about you. Maybe it's not just a shape. Maybe it's a reflection, a mirror that quietly reveals the part of your soul that's been waiting to be seen. Your unconscious chose this symbol for a reason. The question is, are you ready to understand why? Are you ready to stop being controlled by patterns you can't see and start living from conscious choice? Are you ready to face your shadow, integrate your archetypes, and step into the fullness of who you were always meant to become? If your answer is yes, then this is just the beginning. Subscribe now, because the journey into your psyche has only just begun. And trust me, what we discover together in the next videos will change everything you thought you knew about yourself. Welcome to the path of individuation. Welcome to the journey home to your true self.